My name is Sarah Kornfeld, and I'm an American author. I was born and raised in the theater of New York City. My dad was the managing director for the Living Theater, and then one of the founding artistic directors for Judson Poets Theater. I was a trained dancer. I was on stage by the time I was 6. I started writing very, very early. And then we had a terrible crisis in America, which was the AIDS crisis. And we lost about 100 friends in the theater. And I don't know, I hit 21. I had studied the Royal Court Theatre in London. And the heartache of not being with friends anymore that were now dead led me to try something new. And I moved to San Francisco, and I became a producer and communications expert in the internet. So I kind of went away for a little while there. But I stayed with it quietly, writing. And when I hit 50 years old, I was published, my first novel. And now I have The True, which is coming out, and about 3 other books that are coming out in the next 3 years. And I'm just so pleased to meet you. I've been asked the question of why did I choose to write a book about Alexandru Darie? Well, I mean, he was an interesting cat, right? I mean, he was an interesting human being who lived a very complicated and interesting life. And I've written The True thinking that actually I wrote a book about myself. I wrote a book about being a woman. I wrote a book about forgiveness. And I wrote a book where, in fact, Maria Mew, in my opinion, becomes the star of the book. And I think that Duku deserves a book. I mean, he's an interesting person. He's a serious artist. He's a complicated person, not an easy person. But those are the people that we should really look at and say, what connects us to them? What bravery did he show? What didn't we notice? And I think that writing about him is a celebration of his life, but it's also something I think that he would like, which is to take his life seriously and to give it a little bit of time and consideration. I've been asked if I have a strong soul connection with Duku. Yes, I have a strong soul connection with Duku. I have now a very strong soul connection with Maria. In some ways now, I feel more connected to Maria than I do to Duku. But the soul connection that I have to him, it started when we met at the Royal Court Theatre in London in 1990, and we're both only children who grew up in the theater with fathers that were theater stars. And that was the first connection that we came from totally different worlds, America and Romania, but that was like the central connection for us. And that connection was something that over the 30 years of our friendship and connection, we could always come home to. Was what was it like to be born and raised in a theater? And how do you reconcile reality when what you're most comfortable with is illusion? And we got each other on this level. Yeah. I've been asked, when was the first time you met him in person? Duku. Okay. So it was the Royal Court Theatre, 1990. He was invited to do a one-act play in the theater on the top of the theater, and I was there for an international training program. He was relatively miserable. I was relatively miserable. There was tea time at 4 o'clock, and everyone would come and like get really amped up and jazzed on tea. And Duku would sit smoking a cigarette, flirting. Not even with me, but like with everyone. You know, he just flirted with everyone. I don't mean that sexually. I mean like he just liked people. And I I walked up and introduced myself to him, and I told him, oh, I heard your father's in the theater, and my dad is too. And he was just so open. He was so excited to be out in the world. You know, it was right after the revolution. And he was very cautious with people, but he was so excited to be in the new world. And he was so handsome. He was so handsome. And he was alive in a way, maybe for the first time. And it was a privilege to see him in that moment in his life. I've been asked when was the last time that I saw Ducu. I went to Romania when someone told me that he was sick. Ducu didn't tell me he was sick. He told me he had some problems. He hid it from me. And someone finally told me the truth, that he was very, very ill, and I got on a plane, which was a risk because I didn't know if he would see me. And he did. It took a while. We had friends that helped to coordinate the meeting, and I did a reading of my first novel, and he came and he listened, and we sat, and he finally told me the truth. And the truth that he was probably going to die. And then he invited me to dinner, which I write about in the book, and we didn't talk about the illness. We talked about life. We made jokes. We called people friends. And then on my birthday, which is August 18th, a month to the day of his death, we spoke on my birthday, and we didn't mention it. We didn't mention death. We just celebrated life. Wonderful question, which is, what is real in the book and what is fantasy? You know, this book is really about how we're all searching to be known. How I wanted Ducu to know me. How I wanted to know, or I was afraid to know, Maria. How this young woman, Anya, how she wanted to be known by me, how she presented herself to me. And that we're living in a time where, with social media particularly, it's really easy to fake it. It's really easy to make up who your identity is. You can have any email you want. You can change your hair. You can do what I'm doing, which is, how does the light look behind my hair? Do I like it? You can curate yourself. And so the book is really looking at how do we curate ourselves. And at the end of the book, it ends in a dream. It ends in a dream of the Boulanger Theater with ghosts talking to me. And that's, in the end, it's almost like the people who are experts in illusion need to have the last word. That we really have to look at how we're creating theaters around ourselves. And that we could get lost. And we could lose our connection in a real way with each other. And this book is exploring that. The cautionary tale of that. And so reality and fantasy are needed to explore this, I think, this topic. And I hope that I've, in any way, shape, or form, come to that. Well, the question is, how is the family of Ducu involved in this book? This book is only exists, and its only reason it's published is because of Maria Mew. When I found out that I had been in a con for 2 years, written a book about did research, wrote a screenplay, and that the person who was helping me in Romania was in fact a rather troubled woman who had conned me. I finally reached out to Maria, and I told her, and she was so gracious and so forgiving. And I sent her the draft that I had, that was an early draft of the book. She loved it. And she and I went back and forth, and she helped think through it. She gave me very, very real feedback, things that I changed, and she brought it to Editura Integral. So this book is